A war between worlds was not won by generals. It was not won by elite pilots, giant warships, or advanced weapons. The truth is much stranger than that. The deadliest strike ever delivered against the Vorth Empire came from a maintenance worker carrying a toolbox. No military rank. No combat training. Just a tired 54-year-old repair contractor from Missouri with a steel wrench, a cart full of cleaning chemicals, and 30 years of experience fixing broken systems. The official records say the Battle of Titan ended because of a classified tactical operation approved by Earth Command. That is a lie. This is the real story of how one forgotten worker hijacked an alien flagship using nothing but practical knowledge and stubborn human determination. The alien warship called the Night Harvester was considered untouchable. Over 2 miles long, armed with planet-killing weapons, and protected by shielding technology humanity still couldn't fully understand. During a temporary ceasefire, the massive vessel docked beside the Lockheed orbital ring above Earth for what diplomats called peace negotiations. Military intelligence saw it differently. To them, it was a rare chance to study alien technology up close. But to Marcus Cole, none of that mattered. Marcus worked for Titan Industrial Maintenance, a civilian contractor company that handled hazardous repair jobs in orbit. He did not care about politics. He cared about ventilation systems. The Vorth species breathed a dense methane-rich atmosphere that reacted badly with Earth-standard oxygen filters. Over time, it created a thick acidic sludge inside the station's lower air ducts. Marcus had been sent into the maintenance tunnels to clean it before the corrosion damaged the docking systems. To everyone else, the alien flagship was history in the making. To Marcus, it was just another dirty job. He was inside maintenance shaft C12, deep below the diplomatic decks, scrubbing hardened residue from a filtration grate while his respirator hissed softly with every breath. The tunnel smelled like hot metal and sulfur. Then the ship changed. At first, Marcus noticed the vibration. The low steady hum beneath his boots suddenly became deeper. Stronger. The sound rolled through the walls like distant thunder. Marcus stopped scrubbing and looked up slowly. "That's not normal," he muttered. Then the alarms started. Not human alarms. The Vorth used heavy rhythmic pulses that echoed through the ship like giant drums. Slow. Violent. Almost alive. The clean white lighting inside the tunnel instantly shifted to dark crimson. Marcus grabbed the comm unit attached to his shoulder. "Control, this is Cole in shaft C12, he said. "Something just powered up. You running tests." Only static answered him. He frowned. "Control, come back." Nothing. A cold feeling settled into his stomach. Marcus quickly shoved his equipment back onto his rolling utility cart. Industrial solvent canisters clanked together as he secured them in place. He reached the nearest emergency hatch just as the entire ship violently lurched. The force slammed him sideways into the wall. His steel wrench flew from his hand and disappeared into the darkness. What the hell? Then came the pressure. A crushing sensation twisted through his body as if the universe itself had grabbed the ship and yanked it forward. Marcus had worked around military ships before. He knew exactly what a slipspace jump felt like. But human ships eased into faster than light travel using dampeners. This was different. The alien ship didn't transition smoothly. It ripped itself through space instantly. Marcus dropped to one knee, struggling to breathe while warning lights flashed around him. The docking tunnel. The ceasefire station. Earth. Gone. He stumbled toward the hatch viewport and looked outside. Instead of Earth's blue glow or the metal framework of the orbital ring, there was only swirling violet darkness. A live slipstream corridor. The Night Harvester had jumped to FTL with him still inside. Marcus stared in disbelief. No. 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 His heartbeat pounded inside his ears. He was trapped. Alone. Inside a hostile alien warship heading somewhere unknown at faster than light speed. Marcus Cole was not a soldier. He was a divorced maintenance worker from Missouri trying to earn enough overtime money to help his son finish engineering school. He had no weapon. No armor. No survival training beyond basic orbital safety protocols. Just a dirty blue work uniform, steel-toed boots, and a toolbox full of industrial chemicals. For several long minutes, he sat against the cold metal wall trying not to panic. The Vorth terrified humanity. Nearly 8 feet tall, covered in armored black skin, and completely ruthless during combat. If they found him hiding inside their ship, They would kill him instantly. Marcus closed his eyes and forced himself to breathe slowly. Panic would get him killed faster than the aliens would. Then another thought slowly pushed through the fear. He was still alive. That meant he still had time. Marcus stood up carefully and retrieved his wrench from the floor. The heavy steel tool felt reassuring in his hand. He looked down at his utility cart, then at the maintenance map loaded into his work tablet. The map only showed environmental systems, waste processing routes, and ventilation shafts. Nothing military. But it was enough. Marcus swallowed hard. Okay, he whispered to himself. You fix problems for a living. Start there. Because no matter how advanced alien technology became, every ship still needed air. Every machine still needed cooling. And every living thing still depended on systems someone had to maintain. Marcus pushed his cart deeper into the dark ventilation tunnels of the alien flagship. And without realizing it, the Vorth Empire had just brought the most dangerous kind of human aboard their ship. A repairman, Marcus moved carefully through the maintenance network, keeping one hand on the cold metal wall while dragging the utility cart behind him. The deeper sections of the Night Harvester were nothing like human ships. Earth vessels were built with logic. Straight corridors, clear access points, emergency backups. The alien ship felt alive. The walls curved inward like the inside of a giant machine organism. Thick pipes pulsed with glowing blue liquid, and strange vibrations echoed constantly through the vents. But beneath all the advanced technology, Marcus noticed something familiar. Bad engineering. The Vorth were brilliant scientists, but terrible maintenance designers. Cooling pipes crossed directly over electrical systems. Pressure lines lacked manual shut-off valves. Entire environmental systems depended on centralized automation. Everything was connected. Too connected. Marcus crouched beside a large filtration manifold and studied the schematics on his tablet. They built this thing like nobody expected it to ever fail, he whispered. That was dangerous. Because Marcus had spent most of his life dealing with systems that failed. He continued deeper into the ship until he reached an elevated service duct overlooking a secondary operations chamber. Slowly, he peered through the grated vent below. For the first time, he saw the aliens clearly. 2 Vorth officers stood near a glowing tactical display. They were massive. Nearly 8 feet tall with dark armored skin that looked fused directly onto their bodies. Thin streams of pale vapor escaped from the breathing vents near their necks. Marcus stayed perfectly still. Then he carefully removed a small device from his pocket. The translation module. It had been given to all contractors working near alien vessels in case of emergency communication. The prototype device was unstable and barely tested. Using it could expose his location. Marcus hesitated for only a second before activating it. Soft static buzzed through the speaker. Broken words slowly appeared across his tablet screen. Orbital defenses eliminated. Human station destroyed. Arrival at Titan colony in 34 hours. Planetary cleansing authorized. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. The ceasefire had been fake. The aliens had destroyed the orbital station the moment they jumped. And now this warship was heading toward Titan colony. Nearly 2 million civilians. Families. Workers. Children. Marcus slowly lowered the translator. Everything changed in that moment. He was no longer just a stranded worker trying to survive. He was the only human alive aboard an enemy flagship. And if he did nothing, millions would die. Marcus backed quietly away from the vent and disappeared into the lower maintenance shafts. His breathing had become steady now. Focused. Fear was still there, but something else had replaced the panic. Purpose. He found an abandoned water reclamation chamber hidden beneath the lower decks and turned it into a temporary shelter. The room smelled awful. Warm algae tanks lined the walls, and stale moisture dripped constantly from overhead pipes. But it was hidden from the ship's main thermal scanners. Good enough. Marcus sat on an overturned supply crate and took inventory. 2 industrial degreasers. 1 heavy solvent container. Synthetic bleach concentrate. Portable vacuum pump. Pressure hose attachments. Basic welding tools. 3 spare oxygen filters. And 1 steel wrench. He gave a tired laugh. Best armed guy in the galaxy. Food became the next problem. After several hours exploring nearby service tunnels, Marcus discovered nutrient distribution pipes feeding the lower crew decks. The Vorth consumed a thick protein paste pumped directly through heated delivery tubes. Using a small bypass valve and a loose connector, Marcus redirected tiny amounts into an empty solvent bottle. The grey substance tasted horrible, like burned chalk and spoiled meat. But it kept him alive. Water was easier. Condensation runoff from the atmospheric systems collected inside secondary drainage pipes. Basic plumbing. No species in the universe escaped plumbing. Over the next 12 hours, Marcus studied the ship. And the more he observed the Vorth, the more he understood something important. The aliens trusted automation too much. When pressure irregularities appeared in one section, nobody physically checked the pipes. The computer handled it. If a sensor malfunctioned, they trusted the sensor. Not reality. Human ships didn't work like that. Human engineers expected systems to fail. That was why Earth vessels had manual overrides, physical backups, and emergency shut-off controls. The Vorth believed their central AI system was perfect. Marcus smiled grimly inside the darkness. Perfect systems break the hardest. His first sabotage was small. A test. Near the lower barracks, he located a thermal regulation sensor attached beside an exhaust vent. Marcus opened one of his industrial degreaser containers and coated the sensor completely in thick foam. The chemical acted like insulation. Within seconds, the sensor began reporting dangerously low temperatures. The ship reacted immediately. Automated systems diverted massive amounts of heat into the barracks. Marcus climbed into a nearby overhead vent and waited. Minutes later, chaos erupted. Alien soldiers stumbled out of their quarters in visible distress as temperatures inside surged past unbearable levels. Emergency protocols sealed the doors automatically to contain the cold zone. Instead, the trapped Vorth were cooked inside their own barracks. Marcus watched silently as armored warriors slammed desperately against sealed bulkheads while alarms screamed through the corridor. 20 minutes later, engineering crews finally disabled the overheating systems. By then, several soldiers had collapsed from dehydration and heat exhaustion. Most importantly, nobody suspected sabotage. The Vorth blamed a system malfunction. Marcus sat quietly inside the vent, breathing slowly through his respirator. That was when he understood the truth. He did not need weapons. The ship itself was the weapon. And he knew how to make machines fail. Over the next several hours, Marcus became a ghost inside the Night Harvester. He moved silently through maintenance tunnels, striking isolated systems one after another. He shattered communication relays using his wrench. He blocked pressure sensors with industrial foam. He rerouted coolant lines to overload electrical circuits. Every failure forced armed patrols to spread farther across the ship. The aliens searched everywhere, except above them. The ventilation system was too small for Vorth soldiers. To them, the shafts were irrelevant. To Marcus, they were highways. Soon panic started spreading through the flagship. Entire sectors lost communication. Environmental systems malfunctioned randomly. Doors locked without warning. Heating systems surged violently. The mighty Night Harvester began bleeding from dozens of tiny invisible wounds. And the Vorth had no idea a middle-aged maintenance worker was causing all of it. Then Marcus escalated. Inside an isolated coolant junction, he carefully mixed synthetic bleach with raw ammonia compounds from the ship's refrigeration systems. The chemical reaction was immediate. Toxic chloramine gas. Marcus connected his portable vacuum unit in reverse and pumped the deadly cloud directly into the ventilation ducts leading toward the Western Armory. Minutes later, an armed Vorth squad entered the room. None of them came back out. The panic on board intensified. Now the crew believed something alive was hunting them. Something invisible. Something inside the ship. Deep within the command center, Commander Raker slammed his massive fist onto the tactical platform. "Report," he roared. An officer stepped forward nervously. "Environmental systems are failing across multiple sectors. 3 patrol teams lost. Communications unstable. We cannot identify the attacker." Raker's dark eyes narrowed. "How can you not identify a life form inside my own ship?" The officer hesitated. "Because it is not behaving like a military assault." "Explain." The officer swallowed hard. "Commander, someone is physically destroying components, crashing relay nodes. smearing chemicals onto sensors, blocking vents manually. Silence filled the bridge. The idea sounded ridiculous, primitive, impossible. Raker slowly leaned forward. This is not human military behavior. No, Commander. The officer's voice shook slightly. It behaves more like infestation. Far above them, hidden inside the walls of the ship, Marcus Cole tightened his grip on the steel wrench resting beside him. The aliens were finally afraid. And this was only the beginning. The fear spreading through the Night Harvester was useful. But Marcus knew fear alone would not stop the ship. The alien flagship was still moving toward Titan Colony at faster than light speed. Even if the crew panicked, even if half the ship collapsed into chaos, the warship would still arrive. And when it did, millions of people would die. Marcus needed control. Real control. He sat alone inside the dark reclamation chamber, staring at the glowing schematics on his tablet while condensation dripped steadily from a ceiling. His tired eyes scanned every environmental route running through the vessel. Air circulation, coolant flow, thermal regulators, pressure systems. Then he saw it. The Environmental Control Center, etc. A heavily protected systems hub buried deep inside the middle decks. On human ships, navigation and weapon systems were always the most secure sections. But the Vorth were different. Their biology made them vulnerable. Extremely vulnerable. The aliens required very precise environmental conditions to survive. Too cold, and their bodies entered a semi-paralyzed hibernation state. Too little methane in the atmosphere, and their nervous systems began shutting down. Their warships weren't just machines. They were giant life support systems. Marcus leaned back slowly. Whoever controls the temperature, he whispered, controls the whole damn ship. The problem was getting there. The deeper maintenance shafts narrowed into filtration grids too small even for him to squeeze through. He could not reach the ECC from inside the walls. For the first time since being trapped aboard the ship, Marcus would need to walk openly through alien territory, which meant he needed a distraction. And a weapon. He moved toward the hydroponic sector near the lower agricultural decks. The room stretched for hundreds of yards beneath humid artificial sunlight. Thick alien plants grew in massive rows while automated irrigation systems sprayed nutrient mist into the air. The area was mostly empty. Perfect. Marcus spent nearly 4 hours dismantling heavy irrigation equipment. He stripped thick pressure hoses from the water systems, removed industrial connectors, salvaged reinforced valves. Then he headed toward a maintenance locker near the ship's plasma drive section. Inside were several pressurized cleaning canisters used to flush volatile residue from the reactor conduits. Marcus recognized the warning symbols instantly. Highly combustible. Extremely unstable. He smiled tiredly. That'll work. Back inside the reclamation chamber, Marcus began building. Carefully. Methodically. Like a man repairing broken plumbing in a basement. Except this time he was building a bomb. He filled the reinforced hoses with volatile solvent, sealed the ends with pressure caps, connected ignition triggers using stripped wiring from his comm unit and an alien welding tool. The result looked ugly, unsafe, primitive. But Marcus trusted practical engineering more than elegance. Human history was full of machines. 30 hours remained before the Night Harvester reached Titan Colony. Marcus strapped the improvised explosive system onto his rolling utility cart and took a long breath. Then he looked down at himself. Dirty blue maintenance uniform. Grease-covered gloves. Steel-toed boots. An exhausted middle-aged repair worker carrying industrial chemicals through an alien warship. No army would ever build statues for someone like him. But right now, humanity was depending on him. Marcus tightened the straps on his respirator and stepped out of the maintenance tunnels. For the first time since the slipspace jump, he entered the main corridors openly. The hallway was enormous. Polished black metal reflected the crimson emergency lighting overhead. Frost and smoke drifted through the ventilation grates while distant alarms echoed endlessly through the ship. Marcus pushed the utility cart forward as fast as he could. Every squeaking wheel sounded deafening. Every corner felt like death waiting to happen. Then he reached the Environmental Control Center. 2 Vorth guards stood outside the massive blast doors. Towering armored soldiers carrying plasma rifles. Marcus did not hesitate. He grabbed one of the pressurized bleach canisters from his cart and hurled it down the corridor. The metal cylinder bounced loudly across the floor. The guards instantly reacted. Weapons raised. One of them barked something in the alien language. Then the first plasma shot hit the canister. The explosion filled the corridor with a violent white chemical cloud. Not fire. Corrosive vapor. The guards immediately began choking and stumbling backward as the airborne chemicals flooded their respiratory vents. Marcus sprinted directly through the smoke. His respirator filtered most of the toxins, but his eyes still burned badly. He slammed the explosive-loaded utility cart against the seam of the block, attached the ignition trigger, turned the arming switch, then ran. The explosion hit half a second later. The reinforced hoses containing the volatile solvent burst with unbelievable force. The shockwave ripped through the corridor like a freight train. Marcus was thrown violently against the wall. Lights exploded overhead. Metal screamed. His ears rang so badly he heard nothing but dazed and coughing. Marcus forced himself back to his feet. The massive blast doors had been completely torn off their tracks. He stared at the destruction for one shock second, then pushed forward into the ECC. The room, several Vorth technicians lay scattered across the floor, stunned from the explosion. Marcus ignored them completely. He moved straight toward the massive central environmental console. Thousands of alien symbols glowed across holographic displays suspended in midair. Marcus could not understand the language, but he understood systems. Pressure, flow, temperature. The basics never changed. He connected the translation module from his tablet directly into the primary interface. The device flickered wildly as it struggled to interpret the alien operating system. Behind him, one of the Vorth technicians groaned and reached weakly toward a sidearm. Marcus turned instantly. The steel wrench came down hard. A sharp crack echoed through the room. The alien screamed and collapsed back onto the floor, clutching its shattered arm. "Stay down," Marcus growled. The translation program finally stabilized. Words began appearing across the screen. Atmospheric systems. Thermal regulation. Oxygen conversion. Gravity control. Marcus' hands moved quickly across the interface. He bypassed safety locks one by one. The Vorth trusted software completely, which meant once someone gained physical access, everything became vulnerable. Marcus pulled up the ship-wide thermal regulation system. Then he smiled coldly. "Let's see how tough you people really are." He dropped the ship's temperature. Fast. Across every deck except the ECC itself. From a comfortable 80 degrees to -20. Instantly, warning alarms exploded throughout the Night Harvester. Marcus did not stop. Next he accessed atmospheric controls. He reduced methane stabilization levels. Redirected partially filtered plasma exhaust into the ventilation systems. Carbon, radiation particles. Toxic, the ship itself began poisoning its crew. Red emergency lights flashed violently across the console while alerts flooded every screen. Deep within the bridge, Commander Raker watched in horror as entire sectors turned dark. Crew life signs disappeared one after another. "Override the controls," he roared. A bridge officer panicked at his station. "We cannot. The system is locked physically." "Then send troops." The corridors are freezing shut. Several security teams already collapsed before reaching the sector. Raker stared helplessly at the tactical displays. The mighty Night Harvester, a warship capable of burning entire cities from orbit, was being destroyed from the inside by environmental controls. And somewhere inside the ship, a human maintenance worker was holding the kill switch. Inside the ECC, Marcus slowly lowered himself into one of the command chairs. Exhaustion hit him all at once. His hands shook from adrenaline and cold, but he kept the wrench resting tightly across his lap. The Night Harvester groaned around him like a dying animal. Metal contracted from the freezing temperatures. Pipes burst inside the walls. Emergency systems failed one after another. Marcus watched the ship's vital systems collapse across the holographic displays. He had done the impossible. He had taken control of an alien flagship. Not with guns. Not with military training. But with tools, chemicals, and decades of fixing broken machines nobody else understood. Then suddenly, one screen changed. A live communication request. Bridge priority override. Marcus looked up slowly as the holographic image of Commander Raker appeared before him. The alien commander looked different now. Frost covered sections of his armor. His breathing looked uneven. For the first time, the monster looked afraid. And Marcus realized something important. The aliens still believed they were fighting soldiers. They still had no idea who was actually destroying them. Commander Raker stared at the humans sitting inside the environmental control center. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. The bridge transmission flickered badly through failing ship systems, while frost slowly spread across the walls behind the alien commander. Finally, Raker spoke. "Human," the translator growled through Marcus' tablet speaker. "You are killing yourself along with this ship." Marcus leaned back in the command chair, breathing heavily through his respirator. "Maybe," he answered calmly. Raker's black eyes narrowed. "You cannot survive these temperatures much longer. The environmental collapse will eventually reach your sector." Marcus wiped grease from his forehead with the back of his glove. "I grew up in Missouri without central heating," he muttered. "I'll manage." The alien commander studied him carefully. Confusion was replacing anger now. Raker had clearly expected soldiers. Special operatives. Military infiltrators. Not this. "What unit are you attached to?" Raker demanded. "Earth Intelligence? Military Sabotage Division." Marcus actually laughed. The sound echoed strangely through the frozen room. "Buddy, silence." Raker stared at him in disbelief. "You expect me to believe one maintenance worker crippled my flagship?" Marcus lifted the steel wrench slightly. "You people made one big mistake." The commander said nothing. "You build a ship that depends too much on automation. Nobody checks anything manually. Nobody expects systems to physically fail. You trust computers more than common sense." Marcus pointed toward the frozen corridors outside the ECC. "So when somebody who actually understands infrastructure gets inside your walls..." He shrugged. "Everything falls apart." Raker's expression hardened again. "You have delayed us. Nothing more." Marcus frowned slightly. "The ship remains on course," Raker continued. "Even if every crew member dies, the Night Harvester will still arrive at Titan Colony." Marcus' stomach tightened. The alien commander was right. The navigation systems operated separately from environmental controls. The warship was still moving. Still heading directly toward millions of civilians. Raker stepped closer to his transmission feed. "You cannot stop what is coming." Marcus looked down at the schematics still glowing across the console. His eyes scanned the massive coolant systems feeding the ship's slipspace drive. Then, slowly, an idea formed. A terrible one. Marcus spoke quietly. "Question." Raker remained silent. "You know what happens when pressure builds inside a pipe system too fast?" The alien commander frowned. Marcus pointed toward the coolant diagrams. "On Earth we call it water hammer." He zoomed the schematic inward. Massive coolant lines pulsed beneath the ship like arteries. The slipspace drive generated unimaginable heat. Without coolant, the engine would destroy itself. Marcus looked back at the alien commander. "What do you think happens if I shut every coolant valve at once?" For the first time since the conversation started, "You cannot be serious." Marcus didn't answer. "The slipspace core would collapse," Raker snapped. "The ship would tear itself apart during transit." "Probably. Everyone aboard would die." Marcus stared at him silently. Then he said the simplest thing possible. "You should have left the Janitor on Earth." And slammed his hand onto the execution controls. Deep inside the Night Harvester, massive emergency valves crashed shut simultaneously. The coolant flow to the slipspace core stopped instantly. For 3 long seconds. Nothing happened. Then reality broke. The sound that exploded through the ship barely sounded mechanical. It sounded alive. Like the universe itself screaming in pain. The slipspace drive overheated instantly. Containment systems failed. Marcus was thrown from the chair as the entire warship snapped violently out of faster-than-light travel. Without stable dampeners, the deceleration ripped machinery directly from the walls. The ECC viewport shattered. Metal bulkheads twisted. Entire corridors collapsed inward. Marcus slammed into the floor hard enough to crack 2 ribs. The night harvester screamed around him while emergency systems detonated throughout the ship. Then, suddenly, silence. Absolute silence. Marcus lay motionless on the freezing floor trying to breathe. Every rib felt broken. His vision blurred badly. Somewhere nearby, electrical sparks crackled weakly inside dying machinery. After nearly a minute, Marcus slowly forced himself upright using the edge of the console. The ship was dark now. Almost dead. Only faint emergency lights remained active. He checked the system displays. The slipspace drive was gone. Destroyed completely. Navigation systems offline. Weapons offline. Life support collapsing. Marcus activated the external sensor feed. The stars appeared. Cold. Silent. Distant. They were nowhere near Titan Colony anymore. The crippled alien warship now drifted helplessly near the outer asteroid regions beyond Jupiter. Marcus slowly sat back down. He had done it. He had stopped the ship. But victory suddenly felt very quiet. The heaters inside the ECC were failing now too. The temperature dropped rapidly around him. Marcus wrapped his arms tightly around himself while frost spread across the room. His thoughts drifted back to Earth. To his small apartment. To his son studying late at night surrounded by engineering textbooks. Marcus smiled weakly. "Hope you graduate, kid," he whispered. Then exhaustion finally took him. 3 days later, long-range military radar near Lunar Defense Command detected something impossible. A massive alien warship drifting silently through deep space. Dead in the water. Radiation leaking from multiple hull fractures. Within hours, the United Earth Coalition dispatched the battlecruiser UEC Resolute under Captain Elena Ward. The military expected a trap. Nobody believed an alien flagship could simply fail on its own. Captain Ward stood silently on the bridge while staring at the damaged vessel through the tactical display. "Any life signs?" she asked. The sensor officer shook his head. "Almost none, Captain. Ship-wide temperatures are below -60 Celsius. Toxic atmospheric contamination detected across every deck." Ward narrowed her eyes. What happened to them? Nobody had an answer. A heavily armed boarding team breached the night harvester through a shattered side airlock several hours later. The soldiers expected combat. Instead, they found a graveyard. Frozen alien bodies filled the corridors. Entire security squads remained trapped behind sealed emergency doors. No signs of battle. No blast damage. No firefights. Just systematic environmental destruction. Like the ship itself had turned against its crew. The deeper the soldiers moved into the vessel, the stranger things became. Destroyed relay systems. Manually damaged control panels. Pressure valves jammed open with maintenance tools. Chemical residue smeared across sensors. Captain Ward listened silently over comms as reports flooded in. Then one message changed everything. "Captain," the boarding leader said carefully, "we found the Environmental Control Center." And a long pause followed. "You need to see this yourself." The ECC doors had been blown inward from the outside. The room beyond looked like a disaster zone. Frozen consoles. Collapsed wiring. Burned control systems. And in the far corner, someone was still alive. The soldiers slowly approached with weapons raised. The figure sat wrapped inside silver emergency thermal blankets beside a stack of empty chemical containers. A steel wrench rested loosely in one glove hand. The boarding team leader lowered his rifle slowly. "Sir," he said carefully, "identify yourself." The man opened his eyes weakly. Exhaustion covered every inch of his face. His blue maintenance uniform was filthy beyond recognition. But the company patch was still visible. Titan Industrial Maintenance. Marcus looked up at the armored soldiers through half-frozen eyelashes. "Oh, thank God," he croaked weakly. The soldiers stared at him in complete confusion. "Where's the rest of your unit?" the commander asked. Marcus looked around slowly at the dead alien flagship surrounding them. Then he lifted the steel wrench slightly. This was the unit. The soldiers said nothing. Marcus gave a tired smile. "I'm the maintenance guy," he whispered. "And honestly, this place is a safety violation." The truth about the night harvester never reached the public. Official reports claimed the alien flagship had been destroyed by a classified orbital defense weapon developed during the early years of the war. That story was easier, cleaner. Governments preferred victories that sounded controlled, not ones caused by a maintenance worker with industrial chemicals and anger issues. Every surviving report from the ship was immediately sealed under maximum military classification. Boarding footage disappeared into encrypted archives. Witnesses signed lifetime secrecy agreements. Even Captain Elena Ward was ordered never to discuss what she had seen inside the Environmental Control Center. But rumors still spread quietly through military circles. Stories about a ghost inside an alien warship. A human operative capable of crippling an entire flagship without firing a shot. The Vorth heard those rumors too. And they terrified them. Because from the Vorth perspective, the destruction made no sense. No boarding crafts were detected. No cyber attack signatures existed. No military transmissions were intercepted. Their greatest warship had simply collapsed from within after one human was accidentally left aboard. The Vorth leadership reached only one logical conclusion. Humanity possessed infiltration units so advanced they could dismantle alien civilizations from the inside without detection. 6 months later, the Vorth Empire requested peace negotiations. Permanent ones. Unconditional. Human diplomats celebrated the agreement as a political miracle. Only a handful of people knew the truth. The miracle had started with a janitor holding a wrench. Marcus Cole never attended the ceremonies. Never appeared in public. Never received medals. The government quietly transferred massive amounts of money through classified shell corporations into anonymous retirement accounts under his name. His son's engineering school tuition was paid in full. Then paid again. And again. Enough for several lifetimes. Marcus accepted the money mostly because he was too tired to argue. After medical recovery, he returned to Earth quietly and bought a small house in rural Missouri far away from orbital stations and military officials. People who met him afterward would never have guessed he had once hijacked an alien flagship. He looked ordinary. Middle-aged. Quiet. The kind of man who waved politely while fixing his mailbox. But sometimes late at night, Marcus would sit alone in his garage surrounded by old tools and heating pipes while winter storms rattled the windows outside. And occasionally, when he heard a pipe vibrate inside the walls of the house, he would smile. Because he understood systems. He understood pressure. Flow. Weak points. Most people thought strength came from weapons or power. Marcus knew better. Every machine breaks eventually. You just need to know where to push. Far above Earth, the frozen wreckage of the Night Harvester, a dead monument to one terrifying truth the galaxy would never fully understand. Humanity's greatest weapon was never its fleets, or its soldiers, or its technology. It was human stubbornness. The ability to adapt, to survive, to solve impossible problems using duct tape, bad ideas, and pure refusal to quit. The Vorth prepared for warriors. What they got was a repairman. And that mistake ended a war. If you enjoyed this HFY Sci-Fi story, make sure to support the channel. Stories like this survive because viewers like you keep them alive through likes, comments, and sharing them with other Sci-Fi fans. And honestly, every channel fighting the algorithm needs all the help it can get. So if this story hooked you, hit the like button and subscribe for more grounded human versus alien survival stories where ordinary people become impossible problems. And before you go, answer this in the comments. If you were trapped aboard an alien warship with only one tool, what would you bring? Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.